Hey there, everybody. It is our last week of Adam of the Road. I wish we could just read it together. Would have been fun to read the last chapter together. I know some of you already read it. So this isn't going to be very long. Everybody goes, yay! I have noticed that the YouTube analytics are better. And I want to say to you guys that you did a great job last week with Bible and with Adam of the Road. I hope the way I asked your questions maybe helped you stay involved in the video a little more, but I was super proud of you. Almost everybody got A's, so you did a really good job. And this week will be no different. So we're going to finish the book. I'm going to just share a few things and show you some pictures that I want you to visualize when he gets to the end. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And also, just give you a quick overview. So this week, I'm videotaping ahead, right? But next week, which is this week, the week of Memorial Day, you have a short week. And so you have 2 days of Adam of the Road and just 1 day of literature, short, just a literature lesson, not a story. And then the last week of school will be done with Adam of the Road. And so you will just do 2 days of a story. It's actually an excerpt from Tom Sawyer, which is a book you're going to read in junior high. So it'll be kind of fun to get a little glimpse of what that's going to be like. And then you actually don't even have any work to do on Wednesday. So just 2 days of reading, and you're so close to the end. So good job. I'm proud of you, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all tomorrow. So let's get started. Adam, you don't really have to have this right now for this discussion, but you're going to notice your worksheet it's long. Let me just hold it up. It is long. There's a lot of questions to make sure that you're engaging and reading the story, but they're really short answers. But they need to be well thought of. They need to be the right answers. So make sure you're reading. And I would suggest that you have these with you while you read. That would be really smart. And if you read ahead, I would go back. So what's going to happen is we're at the end of the book. So besides finishing the book, Adam is finishing his journey on the road of life. And you can imagine that at some point he's hoping that he runs into Roger again, and you might guess how or where that will happen. I'm not going to tell you. But as he gets to the end of his journey, the big question for Adam growing up, and we've talked about already, is what is he going to do with his life? And is he called to be a minstrel, or to go to school, or to sing in the church choir, or to be a clerk? What is his calling, and what does he love? And so we'll see this first chapter, 21, is called Adam's Song, appropriately. I'm going to read the beginning. Adam is actually writing songs now because he has a lot of time on his hands. Iron lying soon gathers rust. A stagnant pool is slimy. The harp unplucked is thick with rust. Most things not used grow grimy. The highway is the minstrel's home. Ooh, there it is. He's working when he's playing. He's never lost if far he roam. He wanders when he's staying. He's staying on the road, but he's wandering. He's staying in his home. I've gathered rust and dust too long. I need the wind and rain. I'll tell my tale and sing my song out on the road again. So Adam sang aloud as he stepped out on the road leading west from St. Albans. Hoarfrost silvered every twig. That's like the frost you see in the early morning. And holly leaf in the thicket beside the road. And when the sun suddenly came out on the whole world shone and glittered like the fairy country in the Lay of Sir Orfeo, one of the favorite ballads of his dad. In the frozen ruts, thin layers of white ice broke under his feet with a tinkling sound. Overhead, great companies of rooks, those are birds, careered about the sky, cawing and calling. It was nearly a week since Adam had left the Delisle house. The bailiff and his wife had let him go without protest. It was easy to see that they had not been overpleased to be saddled with the care of the minstrel's son. The porter, on the other hand, had given him a penny and a pack of food and some careful directions about finding Roger. Stay on at St. Albans School, he said, or go to Ludlow, or come back here. Don't do any more seesawing back and forth from village to village, and try to land on your feet instead of your head. Agnes, curiously enough, had been much annoyed at his departure. She had scowled and pouted and said crossly that she didn't see why he cared so much about a dog. Matthew had walked part of the way with him the first day and seemed depressed when he said goodbye. I don't suppose you'll come back, he said, even after you get Nick. I don't suppose I will, Adam answered. He liked Matthew, but he did not want to go back to the Delisle house without Roger. Idling about that great empty house when the Delisles were away was no life for a minstrel. Here we go again. His place was on the, everybody say, road. And so that's his journey. But one of the things you're going to see in this chapter is the author wants you to begin to feel how discouraged Adam is getting, because this is the end when it's starting to feel like it's never going to end and he's never going to see Roger. And I'm going to read just a couple more parts to set up what I want to show you. So as he's going along, he goes to Dame Malkin's. Do you remember why? Some of you might be saying, yes, I remember that Perkin had told him that he left Nick there. Now, I don't know what you think about Perkin's story, if you believe that he really didn't know that he was doing such a bad thing. He kind of justified his actions by saying that he realized he thought a horse was better than a dog, and if he'd known that the dog meant so much to the boy, he would have, not done it. I kind of believe him. I don't know what you think. But anyway, he left him at Dame Malkin's. And so I will give one part of it away. Adam gets to Dame Malkin's and finds out that Nick is not there, but that Perkin has taken him with him to Oxford. And so Oxford is the college. It's a very famous college in England. It's still there. I got to visit it. Lots of movies are made and pictures are taken at Oxford. In fact, if you're a Harry Potter fan, in one of the first movies, they filmed the dining hall that at wherever the name of that place, I only read one Harry Potter book. They filmed the dining hall anyway at the school at Oxford, and I'll show you. I got to go there myself. I got to visit Oxford for a short time when I was in England. It was very cool. So I'm going to show you a few pictures. So anyway, he gets to Dame Malkin's and finds out he has further to go, and he still doesn't have Nick. It's never going to end. So I'm going to read a couple of parts that the author reads or writes to help you feel that this is getting to be too much for Adam. The road was so deep in mud and so steep and so slippery, I'm on page 287 if you care, that Adam could not get any farther than Finglas that day. He was as tired at the end of that day as if he had tramped 12 miles instead of 6.5. A cotter let him sleep in his hay barn, which was warm and fragrant. In the morning, Adam had to put hay in his shoes to cover up the holes, but it did not make them any more comfortable. And then I must skip a little bit more. As he was walking that day, scarcely anyone was out that day, and Adam felt lonely and sometimes even a little frightened as he struggled up the steep places, over the rocks, and around the muddy pools that seemed to have no bottom. So now he's thinking ahead of how there was that time when he met this, let's see. Oh, no, I'm thinking of a different time. Sorry. So Adam stops at one place on this journey at an inn. And again, he doesn't have money and he doesn't look like a minstrel particularly, but he will share wherever he can that he can sing a song for them or play something. And so at the inn, people are busy. He doesn't look like a minstrel. He's a kid and nobody really gives him much notice, but the steward asks him to sing a song. And Adam picks a beautiful Latin song that he learned at the Abbey. And it says afterwards, This was wise, for the steward's head ached with weariness, and Adam's voice, so fresh and clear and soaring, carried him away far beyond the untidy little inn and the thought of tomorrow's travels. When Adam stopped, the room was silent. And then the steward thanked him gravely and asked him, why was he alone and where was he going? And after Adam told his story, the steward said, hey, well, if and when you get to Oxford, my son, you should decide you would like to stay there and study, go see my friend, the warden of Merton College. That's kind of like a principal of one of the smaller colleges within the big college. Go tell him that I sent you and that I think he could be of help to you and perhaps to him. Wow. You mean Adam could possibly have a chance to go to Oxford, one of the most famous schools? And remember, there's not a lot of schools in those days. And he gave Adam 5 pennies. And Adam had supper and his share of a bed that night and 3 pennies left over. By the time he gets to where Perkin lives, his parents, he has no soles in his shoes at all. It says, soon the worn uppers flapped so irritatingly that he took them off and went on in his torn hose, his socks. And when those too wore through, he limped on over the cold, wet ruts with bare feet. I'm going to read the end of chapter 21. Between the high windswept fields and the road, it stretched out muddy and rutted toward the bare purple woods. Here and there, a swollen brook flooded the road and reflected the cold cherry-colored light of the setting sun. The shadows came out of the hedges as if they were driven out by the rising wind. Adam felt small and lost as he trudged along under the enormous sky. He thought of the little creatures that shared this edge of the world with him, the mice, the rabbits, the partridges, and he felt sorry for them in the wind and cold. At last, a valley opened up before him, and he saw the thin twist of blue smoke rising over the tops of the trees, and he heard faint on the wind the sound of church bells. That's kind of where Adam hits the bottom. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions where I'm asking you to prove from the story your opinion. So even though they're short, be watching for quotes that are underlined already and highlighted, and be thinking about how can you prove by the response of the audience that Adam's becoming a good minstrel. I just read an example. There's another example when he gets to Oxford, and I'm going to ask you that. So I'm just trying to help you find that, okay? So what I want to show you, I'm not going to tell you how the story ends. I'm not going to tell you how he meets Roger or if he does. And I'm going to ask you, one of the questions is to tell me if you like the book. And you know how books end. Nobody likes a book's ending because the author always leaves you hanging. So I'm going to ask you how you would write a sequel, just kind of what kind of stuff would you want to know. And right now I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to just show you some pictures really quick of Oxford so that you can see what it looks like. So coming to Oxford, I'm going to present so that it's big. So this is just one building, but I just want you to see how amazingly cool it is because it still stands today and it was built in the Middle Ages and it was built and existed during Adam's time in 1300 or 1300. So how long ago was that? This is 2000, over what, 700 years? Isn't it cool? So that's one of the churches, because remember, colleges were assumed to be part of the church in those days. Churches were the education system. Huh, funny. No public school, just Christian school. Look at that. Isn't that so cool? So see this green area in the middle? Those were places where they would film Quidditch matches, for those of you who watch Harry Potter. And you might recognize this. See all these little spires? You'll see a spot where Adam comes out and he can see Oxford from the distance. And he talks about all the spires that stand out in the air. That was one view where you could see the spires. This is just another view. In every, there's about 7 or 8 colleges within the college, and they all have this, they're all set up like this in England. They have this big quad, it's called the, you know, four-sided, a quadrilateral, and it has sidewalks around it and grass, and it's kind of the congregating, the place where the kids hang out. But there's a really cool picture of all the spires, especially against the background of the snow. You can just see how they stand out. So you can imagine what Adam sees. And this, my friends, I got to be here. I got on my tour at Oxford, I got to be in this room. This is the dining room at Christ Church, which is one of the colleges. And this, my friends, is the room where they used to film the dining hall. So for those of you that care, that is that. Anyway, you can see this isn't your normal school. And today, to go to Oxford, it's one of the most prestigious schools in the world. And some students get to go study at Oxford as a summer or maybe one semester. Sometimes when you go to college, let me stop sharing. How do I do that? Stop sharing. Sometimes when you go to college, you can actually take a summer or a semester to travel abroad. That means overseas. And you can have opportunities to go to some of these schools. Oxford's a harder one to do a summer travel, but I know people that have been able to spend at least a semester or a little bit of time at Oxford. It's very expensive, but one of the coolest schools in the world. So there you have it. Adam's going to end up there, and he's going to have to make a final big decision. And so I want to hear what you think about that next week. And I hope you enjoy the end of the book. And it's been nice chatting with you, and I'll see you again on our next Zoom. Ta-ta.